I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
We've got a lot to get to in a short amount of time today. I have to say a few things before we start talking about the hockey. We start talking to David Bastel and all that. I was amped for today, and nothing brought me more joy than seeing a photo of CJ before the show started of him wearing his blue suit and sunglasses in his hotel room. Because when Sunglasses CJ is activated, you know things are about to get ridiculous.
Ridic, bud. I'm in Florida. I gotta look the part. Florida man CJ is back.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
oh my God. So you also went to Starbucks today. Already got your coffee in. Can you show us the name on your coffee cup? For those not watching on YouTube, CHRIX. How do you get Crix?
I mean, if they had to slap the Z on there and it was Chris, at least I get that. Crix is I've never seen that in my life. I have no idea how that happened.
I don't know either. I had to shout that out because you showed it before we started recording, and I laughed my ass off.
Starbucks woke up on a Monday morning and chose violence.
Okay, one other thing. Father's Day was over the weekend. I got to spend time with my pops. I got to give him some gifts, some shirts from the SDPN shop, which you could also check out on our fair website. And I got him some shirts with my face on it. What did you do with your father before you left for Tampa? Or were you able, or how did it work for you this weekend?
Well, you've just shown me up here. I mean, you know, my dad does not miss an episode of this. He's going to be like listening to this like the second it's posted. He's going to be like, wait, Julian bought his dad gifts? Because I didn't get my dad a gift. But I did go down. I actually went the weekend before the Cup final started, went down to Coburg. We had lunch. I treated, but didn't get him any gifts with my face on it, but that's probably a blessing in disguise in my case. So
my dad almost didn't want to take out the clothes from the packaging because he considers these shirts like collector's items now.
Well, they're probably pretty hard to find. I'm not sure we've sold a whole bunch. So, and I don't mean just of you. I mean of all of us.
I don't know about that. I think you're selling the SDPN fans a little short here. I think there are a couple people walking around with stick tap shirts with our faces on them.
That's fair. I got a Steve Dangle shirt. So
yeah, we both have Steve Dangle shirts. We wore them that one time. Well, not the one time. The first time we ever did a show in person together. Another thing I have to say, thank you to everyone who suggested different punishments or different things I could do as part of the Stanley Cup final bet that was posed between myself and Siege. I have decided for the Stanley Cup final, if the Tampa Bay Lightning win, I will down a big glass of pickle juice on air, and I'll do it in one go. I'm not going to do like a whole sip or anything like that. I'm going to try to take it to the head. Essentially, that is what I will do if the Tampa Bay Lightning find a way to win this series, even if it doesn't look good for them right now.
I think you got to do pickle juice and a dick tattoo, given that Tampa's down 0-2 and under a mountain of doubt right now. I mean, the odds of Tampa winning this series are what? I mean, we'll talk to David Bastel. He'll give us the actual odds, but it feels like 100-1. I'm sure that's not quite exact. But
I don't know. I don't know why people are writing off Tampa. I don't get it. I understand Colorado has looked as dominant as they've looked the first two games. This is Tampa Bay. When they get going, and it's hard to stop them, like an Avalanche. And they get to play at home. They have the benefit of last change. They've done this before, especially in this postseason, where they've looked down and they've rolled all the way back. Unless they lose Game 3, I cannot consider this series to be over. I can't.
Wow. I'm just like what? Colorado's lost 2 of 16 games in the last 7 weeks.
Yes.
They held Tampa to 23 shots in Game 1, and a game that went to overtime. Like, well, surely Tampa will get going for Game 2. They had 16 shots in Game 2. Like the Lightning just haven't had the puck. It's not like they've just lost. I mean, it's been a thorough beating. So, look, you're right. It doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter functionally if you lose 1-0 or 7-0. I mean, it's still a loss is a loss in a playoff series. It's not aggregate score here, but I have trouble seeing the Lightning. And I picked the Lightning in 6. So look at I underestimated the Avalanche. I thought it was going to be a different kind of game, but they've owned it for 2 here, and I just don't see you having to drink pickle juice or get a ridiculous tattoo or whatever else you might do.
So technically, your hopes of Lightning in 6 are still alive. There's still a chance they could win like 4 in a row.
For sure. I mean, they've won 4 in a row before. They've done it twice during this playoffs.
Yes, but I don't know. I just think with what Tampa has shown before, the fact that they are the back-to-back reigning Stanley Cup champions, in my view, I have to give them the benefit of the doubt. They cannot escape Tampa with only 1 win in their next 2 games, but they have to win both. But I'm not ready to give up on them yet. I can't do it. I do not want to look like an idiot when the Lightning eventually, find their game again and Andrei Vasilevsky shutting the door. But if Colorado wins and you have to do stick taps in French, which is your side of the bet here, I'm not going to be too upset.
Well, why don't we just switch the bet then?
What do you want to do then?
If you believe in Tampa so much, give me Colorado and you could take the Lightning.
Whoa. I didn't say that. Nice try, big buddy CJ. Okay. We've done enough fooling around here. We'll get to some actual serious topics on the other side of David Bastel.
What a shame I'm going to be to my French teacher. Seriously. I mean, they're going to be like, we tried so hard. We tried so hard with this kid, but it didn't happen.
Hey, man, look, Duolingo, do some reading, get a Becherel, do what you need to do to get yourself prepared for that bet if it comes time. In the meantime, time to bring on David Bastel from Sports Interaction. As always, this is 19 plus. If you're playing Sports Interaction, we ask that you play responsibly, and there is a link to responsible gaming strategies in the description of this show. Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastel. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. David, how often do you go to a Starbucks and get your name misspelled on your cup like our good friend Chris over here?
You know what? This is going to shock you guys because I've done a lot of morning radio before, and I'm talking early morning radio as well. I have never had a cup of coffee in my life. I know.
Whoa. Okay.
My wife parades this around to friends that don't know us or new friends, and like, hey, did you know he doesn't have? I'm like, I'm that weird. I'm that weird guy. Yeah. No, it's always water or lemon with water or some sort of combination, lemon lime with water. Yeah.
Dude. Okay.
Those vocal cords are a temple. Those vocal cords are a temple.
Dude, I think we got to get to these odds because if we start talking about your lack of coffee intake, that is a whole podcast episode.
It might, you know what? At another time. Exactly. Let me ask you guys this. So 7-0 in game 2. That surprised the heck out of probably society, but I'll take it a step forward. Tampa Bay are now favorites in game 3. Is that even more surprising, or are we thinking CJ, okay, well, here's the bounce back. Tampa Bay does this on home ice. It's you had your turn to serve, and now, Tampa Bay, you're up to bat, man.
I can see the narrative side of that, but I'm surprised the odds would be having them as the favorite just because, look, games 1 and 2 were so thoroughly in Colorado's favor in any of the underlying metrics you look at. It's the Lightning. I'm not here to disrespect them. These are 2-time champs, but there's 2 teams on the ice, but one of them is clearly better and through 2 games of the series. And so that one is not the team that's favored tonight.
Yep, exactly.
I'll say this, though, to a certain extent, not to the same level of play, of course. We kind of said that about the Rangers series, didn't we? And the Lightning found a way to bounce back in games 3 and 4 and then 5 and 6. In that Leafs series in the first round, I mean, it was kind of going back and forth in every game. But the Lightning found a way to win at the end. I'm not surprised they're favorites in game 3 at home. I still don't think this series is over by any stretch of the imagination. If Tampa loses game 3, though, We can talk about the series being over at that point, and we'll be one step closer to determining who the Conn Smythe Trophy winner will be, David Bastel.
Yeah, well, Cale Makar right now, the heavy favorite, and it was funny because Nathan MacKinnon and him has been going back and forth, and right now his odds are severely better than Nate Mack. So right now Makar at 144, Nathan MacKinnon at 483, and I know Julian, you're talking a little bit of value on this next player that I'll let you set up properly because he's had a tremendous postseason and a very good Stanley Cup final, and also a free agent at the end of the year, which I'm sure you guys will talk about in another episode. So fire away.
Oh, not necessarily another episode. We are definitely going to get to talk about Big Val Nichushkin, or the choo-choo trade as it is. Yeah. Dude is killing it. And there's a lot of talk about him being a Conn Smythe favorite. And also the fact that, dude could be in for some big money this offseason. We're going to get to that a little bit on the other side of the segment.
So CJ, Valeri Nichushkin, 20-1, 20 times your money on the Conn Smythe. Maybe it's a flyer to throw out there, right? If he continues to do this in the next couple of games, maybe those, because if he does continue to produce, those odds will drop. But right now, 20.17 are the odds for him to actually win the Conn Smythe.
Wow. I mean, I guess, look, anything's possible. Yeah. If another couple big games, who knows? I mean, that's it. It's a funny award. I mean, is Connor McDavid taking money still or what?
Surprisingly not. I know you're right though, because that guy was firing up there, nowhere to be seen, obviously for one particular reason. So
I remember back in 2017, Erik Karlsson got a vote despite Ottawa losing in the third round. He got a vote for the Conn Smythe.
Oh wow! Can we see it again?
Okay.
It wasn't for me, but I remember someone did give him a vote.
Then I guess it's not that far-fetched that Connor could get a vote. You know what? That's a whole other conversation.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yes. Last one for you, David. Just series prices for the rest of the series.
Yeah, series prices right now. Avalanche heavily favorites, just because half of the games are gone. So 1.15 for the Avs, a 5.06 for the Bolts. If you have faith, this is the time to bet the Bolts. And of course, if they lose tonight, then you've probably lost some pretty good money there. But nonetheless, 5 times your money. Bolts win tonight, you're laughing because that number, the next time we talk, are probably going to be around 2.5 to 3. So buyer beware, but the Avalanche apparently are locked in for a Stanley Cup, which would be pretty cool, actually.
Would be pretty cool. David Bastel, thank you so much for joining us, buddy. Don't forget to check out sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. Again, sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. David, we'll talk on Thursday.
Thanks, guys.
See, you just mentioned something pretty interesting at the end of our segment with David Bastel. The fact that Erik Karlsson, what year is it? 2017? I want to say he got a Conn Smythe vote. So
yeah, but it was a third place vote.
So since there's precedent, couldn't Connor McDavid get like a couple of third place votes this year?
Yeah, I mean, he could get a first place vote. I'm not saying he's going to, but there's, the description of the award is simply the playoff MVP. So, I can't remember how many times I voted on the Conn Smythe, probably the last 10 years or so. Mm-hmm. I have trouble calling anyone the playoff MVP that only plays 3 rounds. Because, come on, the point of the playoffs is to win the damn thing. And so, I mean, I think it's hard to vote for a losing team player in the final, but at least that person got their team within a game or 2 games or 3 games or 4 games of winning the cup. But there's nothing strictly speaking in the rules that say he can't. I haven't asked any of my colleagues. I make a point of not talking to them about it because I don't want to influence votes one way or the other. But so I don't know what anyone's going to do. But it will all be released by the Professional Hockey Writers Association after the cup's awarded, the breakdown. And I could see someone doing it just because McDavid still has a chance to win the scoring title, right? The playoff scoring title, which is pretty crazy given that he only got 4 games in round 3 and then obviously none in round 4. But, I can say without spoiling anything, he will not be on my ballot.
So you'd rather vote for someone like, I don't know, big Val Nichushkin for the Conn Smythe Trophy?
Are you riding this train, eh? You love that.
I'm very intrigued about the story with Big Val and how he has emerged from this guy in Dallas who, was falling short of expectations, goes to the KHL, comes back, still not necessarily the guy, and then turns into this perfect player for this Colorado system and this great two-way player for them. I'm not saying he's going to necessarily win the Conn Smythe, but I do like the storyline that he has emerged as a legitimate contender for that trophy.
Well, I would say this: if we had a strictly Finals MVP, as the NBA does and Major League Baseball does with the World Series, he'd be the front runner after 2 games. I think just strictly for those 2 games. And quite a story. He was bought out at age 24. He had 0 goals and 0 penalty minutes in an NHL season. I mean, it's you couldn't set out to do that. It would be hard to imagine statistically not affecting the game at all. And there's huge hopes. He's a top 10 pick by the Stars, made the team early. Lots of big quotes if you go back to that time, comparing him to Malkin and things like that. I mean, just turns out with hindsight, just unfair of him to have to shoulder that. But give him credit. He's not just this season. This was by far his best NHL season, but the last 2 before it in Colorado too. He turned himself into a player, found a home. I don't actually think it's impossible he leaves the Avalanche. I mean, the Avalanche are one of these teams, and let's not race too far ahead, but they're going to have some cap related challenges. A number of the players they traded for need new deals, maybe are walking out the door, but even, Arturi Lehkonen, for example, is an RFA. And, I think that all things being equal, though, they wouldn't mind trying to keep Nichushkin if they could. It's just perhaps he's priced himself beyond that because this has been such a good year. And relative to what these guys make, he hasn't had a big payday yet. And I think this is an opportunity for at least a medium to, medium-sized payday, I would say, for what he might be able to get on the open market.
This is such an interesting situation because he could just stay in Colorado, make less money, but assure himself that he'll be part of a winning team for the next how many years. It's hard to say if Colorado is actually going to be this dynasty team that'll win 4 or 5 Stanley Cups in a row. It's so hard to do. But at the very least, with what Colorado is able to do, they should be in the playoffs for the next how many years. You could do that, or you can take this big money payday from a team that might not use you to your strengths, maybe put you on a higher line. It might be a very different situation. There's just this risk that comes from being in a player of Val's situation. He could end up getting this big money, and then we kind of look at him as like a free agent bust in a weird way. Not to kind of put that on him, but it's just some of the different decisions and different pathways you have to consider for players of his ilk.
Well, and because of his specific circumstances, I think he'll be more aware of that than anyone. I mean, clearly it didn't work in Dallas, and I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not blaming exclusively the organization, the team, or his coach, but there would be some element where he didn't find the right fit there. He didn't find what was needed for him to be successful. And part of it, of course, is just getting older, getting more experience, getting stronger, all those things. But, it's in Colorado, he's found his niche, and he's played his best game, and he's extremely comfortable. And so that would be part of the decision you have to make. I do think it's an easier decision to leave if they win the cup here, in some ways, because, there's no unfinished business then. I mean, it's literally just business. I've been part of this thing. We did what we all set out to do. You can't pay me what the market's going to pay me. I've got to go elsewhere now. Thank you for the memories. I think it is easier to leave if you win, just my opinion. If somehow they lose a series and he is comfortable and they feel like there's still some more there on the vine, maybe he sticks around. But either way, he's in a great position. He's become the player he wants to be. He's in a great spot to sign his next contract, and he's definitely getting paid more next year than he got paid this year to do his job.
For sure. Something we could probably do on a future episode closer to free agency. I'd be curious to know if he decides to test the market, where he would rank on a free agent board of the top available free agents. Obviously not necessarily a top 3 or top 5 guy, but considering what he's done in the playoffs, I wonder what the interest would look like. Definitely some playoff contending teams would probably be willing to throw some money at Big Val. That's something we could look ahead more in the future when it comes to Big Val and other free agents on the CJ show. We can. Yeah,
I haven't got my sort of board together yet in a like I've started to work on it. Clearly he'd be in the middle class, but there's actually some pretty good, what I would call middle class free agents. Whether it's a guy like Andrew Kopp, who had a great run with the Rangers after the trade from Winnipeg. I think we call Nazem Kadri. He'd be higher class, I guess, given the point totals he had this year. Anyway, it'll be a fun exercise. We're gonna get them in some kind of order that I think makes sense. And Nichushkin's probably higher than anyone would have thought entering the year if we talked about potential free agents. I don't think he would have got much shine at all, but because of the success he's had and the team's had, he's getting lots of pub at the moment.
CJ's free agent board. Got my pen clicking here. We're going to write that idea down. Want to transition to another topic. So Tampa, they're down 2-0. They've been thoroughly outclassed. They play at home. I don't think this series is over by any stretch of the imagination, but I have no idea beyond using their home ice advantage to their advantage what they should do to win game 3 and try to win the rest of the series. Like, what can they actually do in order to get themselves back on the good foot?
Well, they got to slow the Avalanche down. How they do that is a question, because obviously while doing that, you don't want to be taking penalties. So you've got to find a way systematically to make it harder for the Avalanche to beat them in transition. I mean, how many goals in a series? It feels like it's either an odd man rush or even just a rush. Guy gets into a dangerous area and just ripping the puck by Vasilevsky. Now, that was interesting. Josh Manson mentioned after game 2 that they feel that Vasilevsky, historically low blocker, has been a challenge for him, because it does seem like they've put a few shots by him in that spot. That being said, every goaltender has a quote unquote weakness or an area where they're probably not as good as others. But even that they acknowledge that, I mean, I think for Tampa, they have to somehow exert themselves. I think they have to probably play a little more physically. Like part of Tampa's MO, I know we've talked about the defensive side when they're at their best. I think they're actually kind of a little bit of a gritty team. I know they got obviously some high-end skill players, but I think that they need to somehow take over the terms. And then, it could come down to something as simple as they need Andrei Vasilevsky to be like the Vasilevsky that we've seen so much in the last 3 years, rather than this guy. And it's certainly not putting it on him, because he's faced so many high danger chances. I think some of that's a product of them getting behind in the 2 first periods of the series. Right off the get-go, they're chasing each game and probably taking more chances than they'd prefer. And so I don't know that there's one area. This is the problem. There's like 5 areas it feels like they have to shore up. But because it's the Lightning and because of everything we've seen from them, I'm with you in saying, like, it's not 100% over. Like it wouldn't be that stunning to see them deliver a game 3 that doesn't look like the first 2 and push back and throw some doubt into this thing. But I don't know overall if they can match the speed and skill of Colorado over the remaining 5 games potentially of the series. It just seems to me that the scales have tipped in Colorado's favor, and I'm not sure there's anything any team can do. Like they might just be better than the Lightning. It might not be, again, a systemic or a lineup or any matchup kind of problem for Tampa.
Yeah. What's so wild about it is, sometimes we'll look at a matchup and we'll see that a team is clearly better than the other. And you look at the other team, and while they have good players, it's just, man, these guys are just not good enough. Imagine being a team like Tampa that has the best goalie in the world, and that is not enough. A team that has a top 3 defenseman in the world, and that is not enough. A team with a playoff gamer like Braden Point is, nope, not enough. Steven Stamkos having the best season he's had in quite some time, nope, not enough. Nikita Kucherov, one of the better skilled forwards in the league, one of the better scorers in the league, better all-around forwards in the league, nope, not enough. Like, this is as frustrating of a situation as I've ever seen for any team getting stomped on in the Stanley Cup final. We're not talking about a team on a Cinderella run that just isn't good enough. We're talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning that have won the last 2 Stanley Cups and have just about everything you need to win a Stanley Cup. And it is not enough because Colorado has that in spades.
Yeah. And look, this is their 3rd final in 23 months, which is insane. Like, they've played so much high level competitive hockey. Some of that might be catching up, right? Like, Point gets injured in this playoffs. I know he's back. I think it's fair to assume he's not at 100%. To me, Hedman hasn't looked right either. He's certainly not. He's not been himself, and we've seen him for so long at what he is, and when he's not that, I have to presume he's dealing with an injury. And I don't have any specific info on that, but I'm not going to criticize his performance in the sense that I just have to believe he's not playing, healthy. McKinnon line has just filled in the Kucherov line. So it just could be that all these guys, it's the clock's striking midnight a little bit. And it's not to say that they're going to turn into pumpkins, but I just think that there's only so much to give. And, maybe just the injury toll and everything is sort of caught up to the Lightning to a certain degree. I'm sure it's frustrating. I mean, you would never want to lose a game in a cup final. You really don't want to lose a game 7-0. I mean, that's a tough one to swallow. And in the manner they did, like 16 shots, so many of their top players didn't even have a shot attempt in that game. It wasn't even close. And so game 3, you have to believe would be their best. Like whatever they have left, we're going to see it on the ice in game 3. Won't guarantee success, but I would think there'll just be a different juice around them because, for all intents and purposes, the series on the line in game 3. It is possible to come back from 0-3 down. We've seen a few teams do it, but I think it's really hard in a cup final. You get this deep in the playoffs. I don't think either team has a whole lot left per se, but Colorado, I think, has more because they've had 2 sweeps, 6-game series. They've had lots of rest. I know they're down a couple of top players and Kadri, Girard, maybe Burakovsky now, who left game 3 or game 2 injured rather. But I just think one team is way more rested and hungry and all those things because of their circumstances, right? As I wrote in my story the other day for North Star Bets, too fast, too skilled, too determined, and 2 wins from the Stanley Cup right now.
I gotta say, with the work ahead for the Tampa Bay Lightning, in spite of the fact that they have all these great players, even if they're not playing at 100%, there should be so much pressure on John Cooper. I think if you're trying to think of an X factor for what Tampa needs to have working for them to win in this series at all, John Cooper needs to figure this out as head coach. He needs to put together a game plan that can slow down that Colorado Avalanche team and help them dictate the pace. I don't think it's necessarily on one player on that team. I understand that Andrei Vasilevsky, maybe you need him to have an Andrei Vasilevsky game where he just kind of steals it. But I think more importantly than anything, tactically something has to change. And I have to put, if it was up to me, you have to put a lot of that pressure on John Cooper. I think that's what you have to do.
Well, it's fair. And look, his whole coaching staff takes part in the tactical stuff. I think what John Cooper
100%.
particularly specializes in, though, is the psychological stuff. And I don't mean with the other team. I think he's excellent at managing his own team's sort of emotions, their mindset, all that stuff. And I think that's where he'll be at his best in the way into game 3 is just having them in the right frame of mind to get beyond that lopsided loss and the way this series has started. I think he'll find a way to push the right buttons to, again, get what his team's best in the moment is. And that's, this isn't their absolute best because the function of where they're at with the injuries and all the things that have caught up to them. But I don't think game 3 will be a walkover. And I do think you're going to see the Lightning give you something. But this is probably where we learn once and for all how close you are to drinking pickle juice or not, because it just feels maybe like the change of the guard in the moment that Colorado is just too strong, and I don't see an answer for them, honestly. Like, these guys are ridiculous. Seriously, like they're nuts. It's just hard. I mean, I want to doff my cap to them. Like, it's full respect, and I really thought when they got against the Lightning that it would be a different kind of game for them, and it hasn't been. They've exerted their will. They've played the way they want to play, and they've done what they do best, and they just overwhelm opponents when they're at that level.
Before we move on to some other news and notes, what did you think of the discourse surrounding Vasilevsky and the debate about pulling him in a moment where the game is well out of reach? I felt that was starting to come up a lot in game 2, and at least especially in the latter stages of that game, considering it was starting to look more like a football score than a hockey score. What did you think?
Well, conventional wisdom is you pull him, if for no other reason, just give his mind a break and his body a break, right? I mean, I can't remember what the score at the intermission was, 4 or 5-0 at that point. I mean,
around that,
second intermission. I mean, the point is the game was lost. And so I can understand that push, but then what makes him special, Vasilevsky's played every minute of these 3 playoff runs. And he plays a ton in the regular season, top 5 in his profession for playing games in the regular season. So the guy he's a battler. He's a workhorse. And John Cooper mentioned if he tried to take him out, he wouldn't have come out. So I think when he's that good, you lean on your goaltender. Like I don't see a need for a coach to impose himself. If the goalie wants to stay in, leave him in. This guy, he can handle it. He's barely been pulled his whole career. So, and every goalie is going to have the odd bad night. He lost game 1 to the Leafs of the playoffs, 5-0. And apparently he was the one who came in the dressing room after and gave a speech about, don't worry, we'll be better next game, guys. So, he's a unique bird, and I mean that in the best way possible. So he knows what works for him. I'm pretty sure John Cooper and France John, their goalie coach here in Tampa, know what's best for him. And far be it from me to say they had to pull him. But I get why there was discussion about that on the broadcast. I mean, anytime you see a team up 5-0 heading into a second intermission, I mean, you don't expect the goalie to see the other side of it just because you got to play again in 2 days. And typically you'd think that rest would be a good thing.
Yeah. I just feel as if I don't know. I felt like pulling him was just kind of the equivalent of pulling out the white flag. Like, I don't see why you would do it. He's your guy. He's gotten you to this point. I just didn't. It's not something that would have crossed my mind necessarily. Maybe, I guess, if it would have gotten to like 8-0 or something, I guess. But when it was like 4-0, like, no, you're keeping him in the game. Because look, with considering how good your team is in front, you can believe in them to kind of come back. And I don't want Brian Elliott in net leading a comeback charge. I want my guy, Andre Vasilevsky, in that.
Right. And you don't have to worry. But he's not a rookie goaltender. He's not someone first time in this situation. That was his 100th playoff game. And he's not even 27 years old. So he's experienced. Like I think sometimes the pull, you're worried about kind of the goalie's mental space if he lets in too many pucks. I just don't think that that's something the Lightning have any concern about with Vasilevsky. In fact, if anything, you see his numbers when he has a tough game, he more often than not comes back and completely shuts the door. So, I think that we have to recognize that not every player is the same. There's not one right answer here. And I think specifically with this player, I mean, it was fine to leave him in. It's an ugly to hang that the upside down hockey stick on his stat sheet doesn't look great, but I don't think it's going to bother him anymore driving to the rink for game 3.
Game 3 later tonight. Siege, you get to be in the building for it and for game 4. And I presume for other games in the rest of the series, you get to travel to Denver if it gets to that point.
Yes, sir. They're stuck with me now. As long as there's games to play, I'll be there.
Imagine being stuck with Chris Johnston. What a luxury for some people. All right, let's get.
So said someone who's never really been stuck with me. So,
I mean, not really, I guess. But fair point, I guess. But
twice a week when you're stuck doing these things with me.
I don't consider myself stuck. Get in on Stanley Cup Finals action. The Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Colorado Avalanche at Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook. Bet before the game starts, live in play. Will Nikita Kucherov continue to lead the way for the Lightning? Doing it right since 1997. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all sports betting has to offer. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Anyway, to the news and notes here. We don't need to harp too long on these different points, but more just your kind of general thoughts on everything. I want to start with a big trade in Montreal and Vegas involving a player that we discussed previously on this. Actually, 2 players we've discussed previously on this show. Shea Weber going to the Vegas Golden Knights in exchange for Evgeny Dadonov. What do you think?
Great trade for Montreal because it's so hard to get rid of a player who has 4 years left on his deal and is never going to be able to play again. Someone who's making $7.8 million there and abouts, which is what's on Shea Weber's contract. Because essentially any team that's acquiring him is committing themselves to being in long-term injured reserve for those 4 years because that's money, essentially it's dead money on the cap. And so it's really hard to move that much somewhere else. And the fact that Montreal did it for a player in Dadonov who I think can play and who has 1 year on his contract and, could therefore be a free agent. I think it's a screaming home run for Montreal because very few teams this would have made sense for. Now, Vegas happens to be one of the teams that makes sense for because Vegas now gets a $5 million cap relief for this coming season, which they need. They actually need more. They're going to, probably make another deal to shed cap space. And, they feel as though with Shea Weber's contract in future seasons going down to $1 million per season, that maybe they can trade this contract moving forward. So, it was a rare fit for both sides, but I love it, especially for Montreal. It just gives them a bit more flexibility. This is all really tied to Carey Price and not knowing if he's going to play another game or if he's going to play the next 4 years remaining on his deal. But now at least the Canadians can, I think, better maneuver if he's not able to be back. And they didn't really pay a price here, right? A lot of times when teams are trading cap space, they have to put in a sweetener. I'll give you an example. Last year, Tampa actually made the reverse of this trade, but with Chicago to get rid of essentially Tyler Johnson's $5 million contract. They took on Brent Seabrook's contract coming back, but they also had to attach a second round pick, essentially, for the trouble. So the fact that Montreal got rid of Weber, the deal, didn't have to pay a sweetener price, and got someone I think who can help their lineup short term. He is a UFA. I would expect Dadonov probably to be traded before the deadline now. So he's an asset in that sense for the Canadians. I think all around it's hard for me to see a downside to it. And so, look, I know some people don't like these trades. You have to sort of understand the workings of the CBA to sort of grasp why it helps each team. But this is a nerd's paradise trade, and this particular nerd gives the Habs 3 thumbs up for that one.
Yeah, because if they had Shea Weber's contract still, Kent Hughes kept reiterating this during his press conference. They could have found themselves in a position where they had have had almost nearly $20 million on LTIR, around that. It would have been a very difficult situation for them to kind of maneuver through.
Yeah, and there's an off-season salary cap, and obviously the in-season salary cap, which would have been complicated for them. I mean, even just from a practical standpoint, when a team starts the season, they have to start the year cap compliant. So the very first day of a regular season, if let's say Carey Price, we knew at some future point he was never going to play again and Shea Weber's in the same spot, they would have had to have both of those players under the cap ceiling on day one before moving them to LTIR. It would have been a nightmare. It would have basically been unmanageable, frankly. And so this at least frees them of one of those contracts. The Canadians hope Carey Price is healthy and can keep playing. Carey Price hopes that, but we saw him when he accepted the Masterton Trophy a week or two ago. He was pretty open that he doesn't know what's going on with his career, and so Montreal's got a plan for worst case scenarios, and I think that this helps them do that. And as I say, they just didn't really have to. There's nothing. There's no downside for them. I guess they're spending a little bit more real dollars on Dadonov, but they're also getting a real player, who's going to play games for them and score goals for them, and then ultimately probably be traded into a draft pick at some point down the line. So Vegas didn't have a whole lot of options here either. I'm not saying Vegas lost the trade. Vegas is in a losing position right now because they have to shed salary cap space. It's not easy to do. But from the Canadians' end of things, they tried to trade Weber's contract at the deadline. I believe there was some talks with Arizona at that time. It didn't turn out. And so then you wondered if it was going to happen. And so for them to have this relief now, I just think it does clarify the picture for them. Not so much this summer, but when we're looking at summer 2023, summer 2024, they're going to be better positioned to chase free agents or add salary and trades or whatever at that time. And presumably then they're going to be trying to get back to being good and being, acquiring players who are going to be owed those sort of salaries.
Before we get to Ask CJ, where we take in questions from you all fine folks on the Twitter space or on Discord, just some coaching stuff. John Tortorella, officially in Philadelphia, on a 4-year contract. Pete DeBoer looks as if he could be joining the Dallas Stars. Pierre LeBrun saying that Barry Trotz could make a decision very soon. A lot of coaching news coming up over these last few days, Siege. Which of these stories intrigues you the most?
Well, look, a lot of coaches getting paid good money, right? Bruce Cassidy was making $3 million in Boston. He gets $4.5 million on a 5-year deal from Vegas, and those are tax-free Nevada dollars too. So that's
Yes,
a great windfall for him and his family. I think a great situation for him. John Tortorella gets $4 million in Philadelphia. So, we're seeing kind of this class of coach, get compensated quite well. Don't know where the dollars are going to end up for DeBoer in Dallas, but, it does sound like he's going to end up there. And so those are some of the veteran guys off the market. It leaves, not just Barry Trotz. I mean, obviously you still got Paul Maurice out there. Not sure if he'll be back to coach this season, but, there are other veteran options. Barry's got a meeting with the Winnipeg Jets again here in the next day or two. And so maybe he's coming home. Maybe that offer of free beer for life was just too tempting. But it's pretty clear too that there's a market for what coaches of his ilk have been paid. I mean, some of those guys like Cassidy don't have a Stanley Cup on their resume. Bruce had all kinds of success in Boston. I know we were over that, when he got fired there not too long ago. But, to get Barry Trotz to go to Winnipeg is going to cost some money, probably more money than they've ever paid a head coach. So, that's one thing that stands out to me. Curious where Detroit Red Wings go. It seems like there's some feeling that they're going to go a little bit more off the board. I'd say, not necessarily one of these coaches that's coached elsewhere in the NHL before. Steve Yzerman keeps his cards pretty close to the vest, but just some of the scuttlebutt I'm hearing is you could see maybe a different sort of hire there. But some of these teams that are ready to contend sooner or hoping to contend sooner, or in Philadelphia's case, hoping to get back to being a contender right away, have gone the veteran road, and they've had to open the owner's wallet to get it done.
The one thing about this Tortorella move to Philadelphia that I keep thinking of, look, Philadelphia is not in a position to contend. I just want to know how long it takes before Torts gets annoyed by Gritty. That is the one thing I genuinely care about with that story. I'm going to be really honest.
I'm actually fascinated by Tortorella in Philly because, look, I think that there's a couple views out there about what John Tortorella once was. I think if you look closely at his record in Columbus, first of all, I've never heard a player there really say anything bad about him. Like, he's in his own way a player's coach. I know he can be demanding and hard, but I think he's very, very honest, and I think his players come to appreciate that. In my eyes, he got a lot out of that team. And, a couple playoff runs, they swept Tampa. They're the last team to beat Tampa in 2019.
Yes.
In the playoffs, in a playoff series. They beat the Leafs in 2020 in the bubble. I think that he is capable of squeezing a lot out of a team, but I just don't know where the Flyers are as an organization. I mean, they got a lot of big money committed to older players on the wrong side of 30. And you just sort of wonder what the direction is there. So that to me all around is just a fascinating scenario because I don't see a quick pivot for them really. I mean, look at their, whether it's Kevin Hayes or I know James Van Riemsdyk's getting to the end of his deal at big money. Ryan Ellis came in last year. Unfortunately, was injured most of the season, but just a lot of guys that you don't know if what is there to get. And they got a goalie in Carter Hart who's sort of waiting for his blossoming moment as an NHL starter. I mean, I just think that there's a lot of kind of moving, interesting pieces there. And Torts is not going to let anything, he'll be pushing every button, that much.
Let's get to Ask CJ. Thank you, everyone who sent in questions on Discord or Twitter. Let's take a few. Speaking of Columbus, this one's from Sean Hoy. Why hasn't Patrik Laine been re-signed by Columbus?
Well, he doesn't have to be yet. There's still lots of time for that. He's a restricted free agent. Obviously, he has arbitration rights potentially. And I all that I've heard is that he likes it there. I believe they like him. And I don't know what that next contract looks like. I mean, really, the term should be our focus because if it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years, they're buying free agent years at the end, potential UFA years. But I have every confidence that a deal will get done there. I just be very curious to see how long it is because he's close to potentially being able to test the open market. And so, it wouldn't surprise me though, if he made a commitment to the city, the organization, and signed a longer term deal. Kind of like we saw Zach Werenski do last year, right? He signed a long contract to remain a Blue Jacket. And I think, that organization has quietly done a better job of retaining talent. I know, obviously a few guys wanted to leave, whether it's Panarin, Bobrovsky, but they've also, I think, developed an interesting culture, and I could see Laine being part of the future of that.
Next question from Norman _LJR. and actually I have to admit, this is less of a question and more of an ask, I guess. Positive Rasmus. Oh, go ahead. I thought you said something. My bad.
Okay. Yeah. I'm ready.
Okay.
Hit me.
Positive. Okay. Positive Rasmus Sandin news, please. If it doesn't include the words extension and with the Leafs, I don't want to hear it.
Well, look at he's on a second NHL contract coming up, so he actually has very few rights. Same with any other player coming out of entry level. The Leafs will qualify him, which will mean he remains their property by July 11th, and we'll just see where this goes. When last I checked, there'd been no real contract discussions between him and the Leafs on the extension yet, but I don't see that as a rush. I mean, because he's a player, the Leafs will keep his rights, and it's really a matter of how long this next deal is, and I think they have to decide if they're keeping him, right? It's not as though they want to get rid of him, but the Leafs have a big summer ahead, and they have 3 established left shot defensemen under contract ahead of him. And at the moment it's Jake Muzzin, Morgan Riley, and who am I forgetting?
Oh God.
I haven't used the Leafs part of my brain too long.
Oh God.
But
yeah, wow. Yeah. Just my brain has been elsewhere, so I don't have it.
We're not going to edit this. We're just going to own this. I have a total brain crap, but I do know.
Good.
But I think he wants to be a Leaf. I think he wants to have a healthy season. He's had 2 years in a row interrupted by injuries. Didn't get to play in the back half of this year and in the playoffs. I think he'll be back, and I think he'll be an important part of the organization.
Okay, one last one for you here, Siege. Is Pittsburgh working towards bringing back Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin? This is from our States 22 on Twitter.
There have been discussions, but it's not a sure thing. I mean, you get this close to the free agency. We're under a month now, and the players aren't signed. It's tempting to at least look at the market. And I would say this applies to Letang and Malkin. I would say this applies even to Philip Forsberg. None of us thought he would leave Nashville, but here we are this close to the deadline. He's not signed an extension there. Johnny Gaudreau in Calgary, the Flames would like an answer from him ahead of free agency. He's got 115-point season here to potentially take this to market. And so I'm not sure they're going to be able to do it. There's different dynamics there with Letang. It's about the length of the contract. He's coming off a great year. He played second or third most minutes in the league on average per night in the regular season. Still a right-hand shot defenseman, still produces points, which are valuable things on the open market. I could see him testing the market. And yeah, I'm not sure that Malkin's back either. So they're still talking. So it's not as though a decision's been reached. But I would say with every passing day that any of these players that have been longstanding members of organizations aren't signed, the more appealing the idea of, hey, well, I got this far. I might as well see what the market thinks of me, what cities might be possible, what other teams maybe move to a contender. I mean, look, I think Pittsburgh has done an incredible job to make the playoffs this many years in a row. It's insane, but it's getting late early there. They just haven't made enough draft picks because they've been trading them. I get it why. They've got 3 banners from this core of the team, that includes Malkin and Letang and Crosby hanging in the rafters there at Consol Energy Center. That's probably worth it. All things considered, it's worth all the struggle, and it's worth all the draft picks and young players you forewent in the past. But maybe it's time for a rebuild. And so the question is, does it start now, or is it starting in 2 years, or what? But it's going to be starting at some point there soon.
Thank you to everyone who sent in questions on Discord or Twitter for our Ask CJ segment. We appreciate them every single week that we do it. Big Money Siege, we got through another episode 81, the Kobe episode of the Chris Johnston Show.
My Phil Kessel episode.
Yes, that's actually more of an appropriate hockey one to put up. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to check us out on Thursday when we have a brand new episode. Will the Stanley Cup final be over by then? Who knows? I don't think it will, but I don't know.
If it's a sweep, I'm doing the stick taps in French on Thursday. I'm anxious already. I need time to practice.
Okay, look, I can't really send you a French English dictionary to Tampa by then, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. For CJ,
we need a lightning wind to at least delay it a week for me.
Okay, well, we'll see about that, Siege. For CJ, I'm Julian. So long, peace, and happy Juneteenth to everyone celebrating in the United States today.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Jillian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.